Hello, everyone. We just finished our executive session. We're going to take about 5 minutes and then we'll be starting our open session. Welcome.
I just wanted to make sure. So it's, to simplify it, say, station form that is. So that's what I was trying to figure out. If there was a simpler way. The other thing, real.
That one is there. It's called CRS.
Okay. Is this? Okay.
Well, that was added.
I've got another set of eyes for you.
Second.
Yeah,
But,
so
I
that's.
found a bunch of other ones in the
Oh,
new,
did you?
the new red lines that I sent, but I think I missed this one.
So if we forgot to put something in, I don't know what that period of is. And we should probably make sure.
I think it's 10, it says 10 years in the,
Okay,
it just doesn't say it on that red line.
okay,
Let me pull it up.
okay.
But I believe it says 10 years.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot to bring mine.
We can hear you, just so you guys all know, and it does say 10 years in 15-17.
Thank you, Attorney Madsen.
Yes.
Everyone online could hear.
That was the nerd talk right there. Okay, so which version did she say? Or, Attorney Madsen, where'd you say that the 10 years was?
It's in 15-17. Town provides petitioner draft annexation agreement. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly, and it's in the cleaned up versions of the ordinances?
Yes. I'm looking specifically at the version with special referral petition process. I can clarify that the other ones have it as well.
Yep.
Are we still on break?
It is correct, okay. It's not. Got it. Okay, got it. Well, and this was. Damn it.
It's a specific document as outlined by Colorado statutes, which town.
It's gonna look like.
Responded. Most recent. It's getting argument. It's like. Oh, how did I do it? CC on so many. People who don't know. Essentially. CC, it's not. Should have two ones.
We should write a towing ordinance. I've had a car sitting in one place since Saturday, hasn't been towed. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to, or welcome to this open session of BOT meeting on December 20th, 2022. And appreciate everyone being here. Let me get to the correct document here I want to start with. So first we got a consent, we have a consent agenda, and we have, oh, I guess we haven't done that. We've been here for an hour and we never did that part. So let's call this meeting to order at 7:13. Macy?
Thank you, Mayor Billy. Trustee Corvalon?
Yes. And just so you know, I don't hear you very well.
She's working on it. Thanks,
Is
Tanya.
that better?
A little bit, yes, thank you.
All right. Mayor Billy,
Here?
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Here.
Trustee Severs,
Here.
and Trustee Sterling.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. So with that, we'd like to go into our consent agenda. We have 4 items tonight. Are there any questions on the 4 items?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
A second. Macy, when you're ready.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to public comment on non-agenda items. We have one item that was turned in by Tashna, and just want to open it up. If anyone in the audience, either online or in person, would like to make a public comment on a non-agenda item, now's the time. May?
I have a very brief comment.
I think we need the other microphone.
Oh, is it this?
Talking to the little black one, thanks.
Testing.
Give her 5 seconds back.
May Gerald, Nederland. Just a really brief comment. In reviewing some of the exchange about the annexation issue, I sensed a frustration about gathering and formatting public input. I just want to remind the board that Envision 2030 had a public engagement subcommittee, and we are ready, willing, and able to help design, I think, better surveys. I think the surveys could be more specific. And then I think we need to make sure that we honor the work that's been done. I just want to remind the board that Envision 2030 pretty much echoed the previous comp plan and going all the way back to the comp plan of 1994, which is to keep Nederland contained. So the rest of my comments I'll bring forward at that discussion, but I think sometimes people tire of volunteering because they're either misunderstood, misinterpreted, or ignored. So, you know, we can really help, and we've been ready to help. I know Miranda's got a lot on her plate, so I'd love to have somebody on the board that is interested in pursuing that, or on the staff. I'd be happy, and other members of the committee are ready to help also. Thank you.
Thanks, May. Are there any other public comments on non-agenda items?
I could just just dawned on me that we just created a position that is more geared towards public outreach. And I think that it would be very beneficial for that position to work with a committee from the community on developing some of those processes and procedures for the future.
That position was pulled out of the budget.
Oh, it was?
Mhm.
Oh, I thought it was still there.
No.
Oh, darn.
Although I'm happy if you'd like to bring it back around.
Yeah.
That is, we are very happy to entertain that conversation.
Yeah.
But it did not come back in after the taxes came.
Gotcha.
But I would love to reintroduce that for all the reasons that May outlined and many more. I think
Yep.
there's a lot of value in that position.
For sure.
Miranda, was that the assistant position you had brought to us into the summer?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
the plan was to be able to bring in an administrative assistant in order to free up the work that Peter does to be much more community outreach focused so that there was that staff person that people could work with on ensuring that we're doing a better job at getting community input and pushing information out.
I remember that admin assistant passing.
So we ended up having to pull it
Okay.
because the budget was in a less than ideal state.
And I talked with Atashna about her public comment, and she I think we're in alignment. I know what she's looking for, but she doesn't want to deal with it tonight.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm also in total agreement with Natasha.
Okay.
Any other public comments on non-agenda items? Hearing none, we will go into our action item. Our first action item of the evening is a revocable encroachment agreement for 72 Barker Road. And Miranda, would you?
Yes.
read the name?
So this is a revocable encroachment license agreement for 72 Barker related to the grade of the driveway. This had previously been brought before the Board of Trustees in September. However, you referred it to the Planning Commission for review. Planning Commission reviewed it on October 26th. It was a very quick review. They voted unanimously to recommend the license agreement. So it is coming back to you for that official approval. And the applicant is on WebEx, should you have any questions. But we do recommend approval.
Does the applicant have a statement or anything to say up front, or just for questions?
Nothing more than sort of what's already been presented. I can go over sort of the circumstance if that's helpful. But otherwise, yeah, just any questions that you all have.
Great, thanks. Is it Anna or Anna?
Anna, thank you.
Thanks, Anna. So any clarifying questions for Miranda or Anna?
Not for me.
Tanya, any clarifying questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, we would like to open this up for public comment. If anyone in the public has a comment about this revocable encroachment agreement for 72 Barker Road, now is your time. Anyone online? If you're talking and I'm talking over you, that means you need to hit *6. Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it back for any discussion and a motion.
I move to approve the revocable encroachment agreement for 72 Barker Road.
I second.
Macy?
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Planning Commission, for your work on this. We appreciate it. So we'll move into action item 6.2 on the annexation ordinance. And I believe Jennifer, you will lead things off here.
Okay, great. Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees. The annexation ordinance 834 is before you tonight. This annexation policy has been discussed with the Board of Trustees really since the start of the year. In fact, I think there may have even been a meeting on annexation in December of 2021. There was a work session on June 7th of 2022, a work session on September 13th of 2022. The Nederland Ordinance 834 was brought before the Board of Trustees on October 4th and November 15th at the regular meetings for discussion. And the Planning Commission reviewed at its November 15th meeting. Changes were made following that, excuse me, November 15th before the Board of Trustees and then November 30th before the Planning Commission. And changes were made to that draft ordinance after those discussion meetings with the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission. Generally, what this ordinance does, it does not make any changes to the Colorado Annexation Act, which is set out in state law, but instead it really supplements requirements for annexation procedure and process and creates additional requirements both on the petitioners for annexation and on the town for review of the annexation process. What those supplemental, I'll give you just a general overview of the supplemental requirements, and that's that there is a pre-petition conference That is required in Ordinance 834. That is not spelled out in state law. A concept plan with very detailed information that needs to be provided by the petitioner is also added in this Ordinance 834. Referral to the Boulder County School Boards, that is added in this Ordinance 834. Also a referral to the Planning Commission. Colorado law does not require that annexation petitions are reviewed by the municipality's planning commission, but Ordinance 834 does require a referral and a recommendation on action by the planning commission. And then there are 3 versions of 834 before you tonight. And in those 3 different versions, there's additional action for a process by which the town residents, town voters can ask the Board of Trustees to refer the annexation ordinance to an election. There is one version that allows for an automatic referral under certain circumstances to an election. And then the other version has a notice of the referendum process. One thing I do want to point out to you is there are 3 different versions. And so if the Board of Trustees wanted to take action on Ordinance 834, it's important to be clear about which version you want to take action on. So that's just a brief overview. If you would like, I can go into more detail of the steps of the process. And also I can be available to answer any questions.
This is Tanya. I have a question regarding you have ordinance with annexation includes special petition election. And then the other ones, I feel like the special petition election is related to a very small group, like just the neighborhood that is asking to be annexed. Is that correct? Where they are the only ones that vote? Is that scenario where if like, say, Hurricane Hill wanted to get annexed, that whole little area would have to vote on it, correct? Is that what that refers to?
No, so let me just explain the version that's a special referral petition process. That's what
Special petition election. Yeah, that's what I thought that was. So I guess I am confused.
Yes, that's not what it is. So
Okay.
what it is there is a requirement in, I believe it's 15-27, where after the Board of Trustees approves an annexation ordinance. So that's the Board of Trustees has decided, yes, we like this property. We want to bring it within the town. We think it's a good for the town. Then what happens is the Board of Trustees essentially directs the town clerk to make available a special petition for an annexation election and publishes on the website that this petition is available. Then this annexation election petition would need to be signed by 30 registered electors in the town of Nederland, and submit that petition within approximately 30 days afterwards.
Oh, I get it.
And then
Okay.
it goes to a vote.
So it's just like a referendum.
It is. And
It's
what it
just
does,
30 instead of 5%.
exactly.
It's 2.5%, and it's so it's half of what the 5% would be.
So it's the same thing. It's just less people have to sign the petition.
Right, and we
Correct.
locked it in at 30
Is
versus
there anything
2.5%.
different than the end? Okay. And I'm curious as to, no, that's fine. That's it. That was my question. I'm glad I clarified because I thought that was that scenario we talked about many meetings ago about neighborhoods and blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Can you clarify that one thing though, Jennifer, about the fact that the neighborhood to be annexed and that whole vote situation is actually state law? Can you?
Yes, so that is in the AIM, which is part of the packet tonight. That is one of the types of an annexation petition that's submitted. So typically you would get a landowner annexation petition. And what that means is that the landowners of the area desiring to be annexed, that 50% of those landowners have signed that petition. Well, if you can't get 50% of the landowners, the other option for asking a municipality to annex property, the other option is an annexation election. And with that petition would be signed by, it needs to be signed by at least 75 registered electors or 10% of the registered electors, whichever is less. So, you know, say you only have 75 registered electors in an area and you have a petition then that's signed by 8 people. So that's 10% of the 75 registered electors. Those 8 registered electors could come to the town with a petition that meets all the requirements of Ordinance 834 and could say, we want to be annexed. If the board finds that it meets all of the requirements of the Annexation Act, meets all the requirements of the ordinance, then the people in that area, the registered electors in the area would have an election essentially for do they want to be annexed. So it's a long-winded process for getting agreement from the people who live in the area to be annexed.
Wouldn't that election be held by the county, not the town?
It's actually held by the district court. You have an election commission, and this election commission that is set up by the courts runs the election.
And how do they generally get paid for?
Well, we've set out that it's paid for by the petitioners.
Thanks for clarifying that for everybody. And that is state law. I just want you to.
That
reiterate
process is
that
state
fact.
law, correct? Yes, that process. And it rarely happens. I mean, generally you're going to get a petition by people who own the property saying, we want to be part of your municipality. That's what happens 99% of the time.
And just to clarify, but these are other ways that the start of a petition could be.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think there's been some confusion of that these are required pieces in order for a petition to start. And the reality is these are just other ways that it could start.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any clarifying questions for Jennifer from the board? Any more? If not, we'll go to public comment. And well, let's start in the room with public comment and 3 minutes. State your name and where you live and go from there. We'll start with folks in the room and then we'll open up online. And folks in the room, when you come up to the podium, there's 2 microphones there, a little confusing. The big one is not the one you're talking to. The smaller black one to your left is the one that works.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Rich Blatnick. We have a residence in town, and we have owned property in Netherlands since 1946. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your service. I know it's taken time away from your personal life and your family and your businesses, but appreciate your contributions to the town. In your pre-election bios, I noted that all of you supported transparency and have a desire to involve the Nederland community in initiatives that are important to you and the community. I also noticed that several of you support working with Boulder County to develop a new IGA that addresses the town's goals and priorities. Given this, I do not understand why the BOT has moved away from approving a new IGA with Boulder County. Rather, you have decided to develop an annexation agreement which excludes or minimizes input from Boulder County and the town residents. This annexation agreement will allow the BOT to authorize annexations on parcels 10 acres or less without approval from the county or requiring a vote of the town's electorate. Boulder County has worked very hard with your representatives to incorporate your goals into a new IGA while maintaining their governance responsibilities for the 17,500 acres under their jurisdiction. The BOT should not have total authority over town annexations. The town has always had an interest in maintaining its unique character, and it understands that development would have impacts on wildlife, transportation, and the environment. A partnership with Boulder is important to ensure a coordinated town-county effort to minimize impacts from annexations. A benefit of operating under a new IGA is that it will provide the town with resources of the county that the town doesn't have to help evaluate future annexations or rezoning initiatives. I encourage you to rethink your approach and either initiate additional negotiations with Boulder County to obtain more of your goals or accept the IGA as it and approve it. In addition, I understand that you are considering eliminating the need to submit any proposed annexation for the vote of the Netherlands residents. The voice of the Netherlands residents needs to be heard. You should require voter approval for any annexation decisions that you make because they will impact Netherlands' quality of life, the utilization of town utilities and services, transportation, town safety, taxation, and financial matters related to the operating of the town. Please don't let the desires and promises of any one landowner influence your decisions on something so important to the town as zoning and annexation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dick. Appreciate it. Anyone else have a public comment here in the room?
May Gerald. I just wanted to follow up on my comments in the general comments that Miranda's mentioned that there's no staff person to interact with the Public Engagement Committee. So I'd like to reiterate my request that maybe a board member come over, have a cup of coffee or something, do some brainstorming. So just a few quick notes on the annexation. I've already submitted a letter and I won't go over that again. And I really believe that the part that's missing from this document is the preamble, like the preamble to the Constitution. It's pretty important. All our planning documents recognize that Nederland is in a limited geographic location. Right now, we have the roads, I mean, Hygiene has bigger roads than we do. So with these fires cropping up everywhere, I think we really have to be conscious of what our foregoers have said, which is we have a limited space, we're going to have a limited population. I've been begging the board to start to assign some numbers. Tom's our number guy, right? Everybody else knows numbers. What's our model city that we want? How much of it is affordable housing? What is the perimeter? How can we keep the perimeter what it is, with the exception? Kayla has a planned project. I believe that the amount of work that's gone into her project deserves a vote. And so I think that beginning of the ordinance should read, it is the will of the people of Nederland that annexation be strictly limited. For example, let's say the town had an opportunity to drop by a little piece of forest land, right? Annexation, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be development. So it would start with that. It is the will of the people to strictly limit annexation. That gives the intent of the entire document. In very limited cases, Kayla's proposal, annexation, and I'm not saying I support the scale of Kayla's proposal necessarily, but I think she's put a lot of time into it. So, and I think she deserves to be heard and voted on. In very limited cases, annexation may be approved through the following process, which you guys are working on. So just a few real,
That's your 3 minutes, so if you want to wrap it up, please.
okay, can I make 3 little points based on what other people have said?
You're really done with your time, so I think we have-
Okay, thanks for the
Thanks,
opportunity,
ma'am.
Billy.
Appreciate it. Anyone else in the room want to make a public comment?
Kayla Evans, 1250 Eldora Road. I feel like I am the white elephant in the room. I think we're putting the horse before the cart. We're putting all sorts of ideas out there that really don't have, let's go back and start with step 1. The IGA. How does it benefit the town? Do you want to renew it? Do you want to add to it? Do you want to subtract to it? Okay, let's do that portion of it. Then, do you want to decide and discuss the ability for the town to have annexation? You can have an IGA without language about annexation in there, or you can put language in it. But they don't necessarily have to go one with the other. The next is, if you have language about annexation, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's about or only the project that I've been working on for 10 years. I think it's really difficult and really sad when the people that have are keeping the people that don't have from becoming part of the process in this community, who want to live here, who can't afford $1 million home. It's my intention, if the annexation for our property is approved at some point, to make sure that we do everything we can to be good neighbors to the people around us. I would ask those that are speaking in opposition of me to actually have a conversation with me personally, instead of floating letters around that have information in them that are not pertinent, not relevant, not true, and not of the public domain because they are personal family matters. I'm sorry for that. It also kind of makes me a little mad. Okay, I can get mad for another minute here. It's very frustrating for me. I hope you all please understand that when I have started this project, everything I look at, the daycare, the trail, the this, are things that I keep adding to it to make this town better, to help people who don't have certain things in this community have them, have the benefit of them. So one needs to ask, why are people opposing this? Are they opposing it because it's right next to their property and they use it as open space and think they can hike up there and treat it as their own property, as some people have? Do they just, as a matter of fact, think that annexation is a bad thing? Well, go back and figure out, when was your house built? Maybe it wasn't built when we decided not to have any more growth. So guess what? You got to move. You're not in this town anymore. The mentality behind these things makes me crazy.
Oh, sorry. I think our time ran out. Yeah, I mean, mesmerized.
crazy.
I didn't look at the time.
So please, thank you all for your consideration, and one step at a time. There is no quid pro quo. There is no, this has to happen for this to happen, for this to happen. One step at a time. I thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Kayla. Any other public comments on annexation in the room? Thanks.
Josh Lynch. I live at 711 Macmillan in Nederland. I'll just take a couple minutes of your time. I'd like to speak first to the IGA and the fact that it seems like a decision has been made to not move forward with that agreement. And I would just urge you to accept and take the lessons and the benefits that IGA has given the town and take those and move those forward into whatever plan it is that you adopt. I'd like to speak specifically to just a couple of things. One is to the necessity for an automatic vote. I think given the potential impact of a larger annexation to the community, that regardless of what the petition is, given that impact, that the community should have the right to be able to vote, given that the repercussions, whatever petition that may be, will affect all of us. I don't care. Again, I just want to be very specific. My intent here is to speak to any petition now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and 5 years from now. It needs to be equitable and it needs to be the same in any given case. I don't know if it has changed or not, but in one of the previous versions, it was mentioned that a narrative would be expected with regard to traffic and to the environment. One of the recent changes I saw spoke to a professionals approved by the BOT, and I would just want to encourage you to adopt that language and to use the same type of professional regardless of the petition that's made. Just at a high level, I want to mention that whatever guidelines and rules and policies that you guys make, I think they need to be fair and objective so that they can be applied now and in the future. And I would urge you, first and foremost, to adopt a process with rules that all of you and the town can stand behind, and one that serves the community the best. And with that in mind, I would hope that whatever the petition is, if you have created something and created a process that you can stand behind, that once you've gone through that process, whether you agree or disagree with the actual outcome, you can at least agree that the process was fair and was objective. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Good points. Rich?
Rich Tillotson, 45 Hurricane Hill Drive. I would have comments about the particular draft that I guess just came out today. I'm confused. I hear talk about a particular proposal of Kayla's, but I understand this discussion that we have here is strictly about creating a new annexation ordinance to replace that the town has on the books right now. Is that correct?
We don't have one on the books now, so it's to create a new annexation ordinance in
There's
order
a
to have one.
process there, is there not?
The process is defined by the IGA right now, which is expiring.
Okay. But the discussion revolves around the draft for that replacement. Okay.
And there's 3 drafts in front of us.
And I don't think it revolves around any kind of specific proposal for annexation
No.
from
absolutely.
a client
No.
or petitioner.
No.
Okay. So where is this meeting in the process of voting for an ordinance to our municipal code? Are you voting for the final decision on this draft? Or is this, okay, do ordinances of the town, which is law, doesn't that require a number of public hearings on a final draft? with adequate time for people to review it?
It does require a process, and we have gone through that process as Attorney Mattson enumerated at the beginning of this
No,
meeting.
the process on the final draft, which just came out today.
I don't
I
want to
think
want
there-
to speak incorrectly,
I
so
believe
I'll
there
let
are
our
time-
attorney.
And maybe,
answer that,
maybe
but-
Jennifer, you can answer that because we've had, you know, since September 2021, this has been in BOT meetings and we've had different versions and we've been taking feedback and, you know, things like changing the word narrative and getting more specific and taking feedback and talking about different. And so we have these 3 drafts. What's your answer to Rich?
That's the ordinance was on the agenda, posted on Friday. There's no requirement that there be a number of meetings before the Board of Trustees about the specific ordinance. It can be adopted in one evening. In this case, there have been at least 2 meetings where the drafts have been discussed. There have been revisions. And an ordinance can be amended, a draft ordinance before the Board of Trustees can be amended on the floor. So it doesn't have to be that a final version is before the Board of Trustees any number of times before it can be approved.
Okay, so there would be no further public hearings after tonight if they vote on it tonight. Is that my understanding of what you just said?
There, from what I just heard, there would be no legal holding to their legal obligation. Thanks.
Okay.
Though at any point, the mayor or 2 trustees can put anything on the agenda.
Yep.
And that can be at the
Such as
request of
an amendment.
residents.
For example, we could amend it later at any time.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm kind of confused about is the process from here. If there's any further hearings, if you guys vote on this tonight.
Not currently scheduled as far as I know, but there would be a more extensive process of defining and building out the application process.
Okay,
et
so
cetera, et cetera.
you would decide on the 3 options
So-
as far as voter approval and stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
So I've actually got to cut
strongly
you.
Okay.
I'll let you make a finishing statement, but
Strongly
we
urge
cut you
what
off for a lot.
that Josh made as far as all of his comments.
Yeah.
Okay,
Process.
yeah.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for letting us cut in your 3 minutes with the legal advice too. Now, are there any other public comments on this agenda item from folks in the room? If not, we'd like to open up to folks online. Are there any public comments on annexation ordinance?
Susan Wagner.
Hi, Susan. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, first of all, I agree with Kayla on the IGA issue, that should be decided first. It doesn't have to involve annexation. I strongly disagree with comments made by a trustee that the IGA does nothing for us except limit our decision-making. And I would like to know, I was extremely disappointed. I have to say that I've had family deaths and I haven't been as involved this year as I was previously, but I was involved all throughout the renegotiation of the original IGA. And I was very disappointed to see in the background to this meeting, you know, earlier this year, Eric Combs Ismail and Julian Taylor were appointed as the new trustees to work with the county to get an IGA. I understood that they were going to make proposals for innovative ways that the county could support the town, whether with financially or with staffing. But I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard anything. You know, I did ask one trustee to let me know when the annexation ordinance was discussed, and I never heard back. She's now resigned, but I have tried to be involved, and I would like to know why and what Julian Taylor and Eric Combs Ismail managed to discuss with the county and whether they have actively sought creative ways to get county support. I strongly disagree with having no IGA. One of the main ways the IGA can help us is have the county behind our own goals for planning. And I noticed in 834, in 2 different sections, both the petitioner and staff have got to outline how a proposed annexation is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. For those of you who were not involved in this renegotiation, I could point you to the records, but the only request the town made to the county, the only point that there was disagreement was the county said that one particular property, which in fact has been driving all of this, whether people want to admit it or not. One particular property, the town said their planners had looked at it under a previous application. It could not sustain more than 50 units. The Bowen report said no more than 40 units, but the town's only written objection was to this. They wanted no limits whatsoever. So when I read Trustee Combs-Esmill, whom I respect very much, that town decision-making is limited, I'd like to know, how did the town decide there should be no limits whatsoever? I feel that you're rejecting the expertise and the, I mean, as Kayla said, you don't necessarily have to have annexation in IGA, but I agree with Kayla that we need to start with the IGA. And you can't simply say, as you did in the background, oh, well, the IGA was going to expire, so we had to write an annexation ordinance. I understood, and I think the community understood, that the trustees would actively work with the county. And it was, after all, the town that had the objection, to that one principle. So I
Thanks.
urge you to
It's
put
your
off
3
the final
minutes.
vote on this annexation ordinance and explain to the community why you're dropping the IGA, what you tried to get out of the county,
Thanks,
and why
Susan.
you think your decision-making is better without county input. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Mhm.
Any other public comments for the folks on this annexation ordinance item from the folks online? Someone raised a hand.
Don Baumhover.
Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Dawn Baumhover, Nederland resident. So I wasn't going to comment until I heard Susan's comment. And I think it should be noted that, first of all, Susan lives outside of town. And second of all, I just want to publicly disagree with Susan that Boulder County's, the IGA is in Boulder County's best interest, not in Nederland's best interest. I believe it is in our best interest to be autonomous and for the board to decide how best to handle annexation for our residents as they're doing tonight. So they can decide not to let the IGA lapse, which I think would be wise, and as many other municipalities have. And that's all I have to say. It is not necessarily, the county is a great support to the town of Nederland in many, many respects, not in the respect of land use. They want it for their open space. They don't want development, period, ever, anywhere. So that's the county's kind of stance and when it comes to land use. And that is no comment on many positive, and relationships we have with the county in other areas. So thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Any other comments from folks online?
This is Eric Davis. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Eric, we can hear you. You got 3 minutes.
Great. Okay. I missed the name of the person who spoke just before me, but I wasn't really going to speak until I heard her, so that's kind of funny. But anyway, I couldn't disagree more that the county is anti-development. I think the county is very for thoughtful development, infill, proper town planning with high density centers, medium density outer perimeters, lower density perimeters around that, sort of like concentric circles, if you can think of it. I lived in Summit County. My mom was the mayor of Dillon. I've seen how towns can develop thoughtfully and how they can get really messed up. I think a really good example of that is Dillon or Frisco or Breckenridge, which has a center versus something like Silverthorne, which has allowed development to just sprawl all the way down the valley and totally, kind of eats into all of the natural, the valley that extends up there. Anyway, so I think it's just more about thoughtful development than anything. And I wanted to just point out too, I think Jennifer had made comments about the voting process for those being annexed. And I think she mentioned something like only 50% of the landowners who wished to be annexed needed to weigh in on something. I think the code is very clear that it's over 50% would need to weigh in on wanting to be annexed. And so I would encourage a careful read of that particular part of the Colorado statute that is about, landowners who want to be annexed.
Thanks,
That's
Eric.
all. That's my, yep.
Appreciate it. Anyone else out there? And it does say a majority of, so that would imply greater than 50%. Anyone else out there have a public comment on this item?
Just remember *6 for call-in users.
Thanks. *6 for calling. We do see some people out there who haven't spoken. Hearing none, and if you haven't gotten through, get through quick so we can fit you back in. But hearing none, we will bring this back. We'll actually officially close public comment and bring this back to the BOT for discussion.
I do have just a few things I'd like to say in response here, because I agree with so much of what has been stated so far, and I also personally believe that this ordinance, as drafted, in fact, all three of them to a large extent, address many of these concerns and issues quite strongly and quite elegantly, in my opinion. So, first of all, I think that this ordinance strengthens our position with Boulder County. It includes a referral to the county. We have no obligation to do that. It's not required in state statute, and we've included that specifically because we want to indicate to the county that we want to work together more collaboratively. Up until this point, the county has not reciprocated that feeling. I've been in negotiations with them, as was mentioned by Susan Wagner, with Trustee Taylor in the past, and that was their position, that they're not really that interested in having a negotiation. Well, what can we do from there? To me, it seems that the responsible thing to do was to draft an annexation ordinance, so we had our own policy in place when that IGA expired, and to include a lever that demanded that we refer it to the county for their feedback with the resources that they have. Financial resources were not on the table when we negotiated with them. Staff resources, county staff resources, were not on the table when we negotiated with them. I'm not sure that they thought that we would, pull this off, personally. And I think that now that we're on the verge of doing so, it puts us in a better position to negotiate a better IGA with the county that does actually include support for Nederland, but with the vast resources that the county has. So that is my hope for the future, that this ordinance will open a pathway for a meaningful collaboration and a negotiation with the county, not that it exclude them from the process. And I think if you read it carefully, you will see that this is in fact the case. And that's the position that I'm proceeding with. And I also think it's worth noting that I completely agree with almost everything that May said as well. Annexation is not all about development. There are other potential annexations, not just the one kind of elephant in the room that we've been discussing, which of course is Kayla. And I appreciate that Kayla has been engaged in this process all the way throughout. But we do need to have a process that is a process. Mm-hmm. It's not targeted, right? We're not out there to grab land as a town. That is not what we were trying to do here. In fact, what we're trying to do is ensure that everyone is treated equitably and fairly by having a clear step-by-step process that interprets what are essentially vague provisions in the Colorado Revised Statutes for how annexation should work. If they are vague and town staff doesn't have a clear process in place, we're going to get petitions and they're going to be processed differently. And that's going to leave town open to liability. We need to make sure that we have a clear step-by-step process in place. Again, I believe that this ordinance in its draft language does precisely this. The question of voting, I think, is really the one that we've been kind of left to discuss. It's the main issue here is that trigger. And there are many different perspectives on this, of when that is appropriate and how that is appropriate. I am really, really excited because I think that through a legitimately collaborative process, over many months and also right up into the wire here in working hard to have these conversations among trustees and with members of the public, we have come to something that I think will work. And that is a severely reduced number of signatures required to trigger an automatic election. And I don't mind telling people right now in this very moment that I will likely be the first signatory on that petition, right, to ensure that an election takes place, right, as I am a resident of this town and I can sign a petition as well. So we have built in many protections here and a project that is truly well put together and a true benefit to the community and to the town, a project that the town actually wants and can embrace and get behind, would pass an election, would have the mandate of the people, and I think is the smartest way to go about addressing any potential annexations. So I just want to make it very clear to everyone that none of this is set in stone, right? We pass ordinances all the time. Like, I do it all the time, right? And we can do it again. If we pass this, we will have something to amend in the future. We will have something to refine. We will have something to work on as a community together. If we have nothing and all we do is keep running in circles, talking about whether or not certain annexation projects should happen, we very much risk letting all of these intergovernmental agreements lapse and having no policy in place for the town of Nederland. That to me is bad governance. That to me would be a disastrous outcome of what has been a very long process that I've been personally involved in. So I just want, hopefully, to assure everyone that this has been very, very well thought out, debated, and researched. This has been going on for a very long time. I regret that folks feel like they're blindsided by it, and I hope that we can do better in the future to ensure that that doesn't happen again. But at the same time, this has been going on for a long, long time, and now is the time, I think, to discuss passing it as an action item, and that's precisely what I think we're going to do.
Eric, you personally have been working on it for what, 2 years?
I mean, my first meeting on this was my second month as a trustee 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So,
Thanks, Eric, thanks for working on this for so long. This is Tanya. I just want to make a couple comments before it goes around the board, as it goes around the board. I'm still fully in favor of a triggered election. This get 30 signatures and then it goes to election. I mean, I just don't understand the general opposition on the board for a triggered election for 10 acres or increased density. I don't understand why the board is so against this. I remember just the last meeting, we had Karen Blakemore come here as a trustee and saying, well, the people trust us. They voted for us. We're qualified to make these decisions. She's gone. She's made decisions. She quit. And now we have to appoint somebody that isn't voted on, that isn't elected, that isn't trusted by anybody. And we are giving an immense amount of power. And I understand that you guys are thinking, oh, well, all residents have to do is get 30 signatures and it's nothing. But, you know, people are busy and things slip under the radar all the time. And you have 30 days to do it. I just don't understand the opposition. We are not all elected. We get elected and then we quit after making decisions that will follow us long after we're dead. You know, I'm kind of disappointed. And I think everything else on the annexation ordinance is very thorough, and you did a great job, Eric. And I think there's a lot of due diligence, and it's going to have to jump through a ton of hoops before it even gets to the point where the BOT votes on it. And then at the end, the 7 of us, or at this point, the 6 of us would, if it came to us today, you know, when we are missing a trustee, would have to vote on something that will affect town for generations. And I wish somebody on this board can explain to me why they're so opposed to an automatic election. I'm hearing, well, there's probably going to be annexations that are 10 acres or of higher density that everybody in the community is in favor of. So why push it towards an election? Why waste that time? Why waste that energy? Well, It's just the final step. It's being thorough. If everybody's in favor of it, it will go unanimously voted and there will be no problem. And I'm just disappointed, but I think not in you, Eric. I think you've done a good job on the annexation ordinance, and that's my position has not changed. It's only been more strengthened since Karen resigned because it shows how fickle we are, and yet how our decisions follow us even when we're done with it. We move away, whatever, and it's just I don't. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Tanya.
I actually have a response to that, and I'll kind of look to the public and speak because I was one of the ones that was actually in favor of a non-triggered vote. And here's my reason for that. Some folks in their letters call that anti-democratic. And I think that it is one of the most democratic principles that we could do. And the reason why is because I want people involved. I want people every step of the way. I want people to get those 30 signatures, like Eric said. If it's not a good idea, he's going to be the first signature and I'm going to be the second. So to be able to have that referendum in place means that people are tracking with us and their voices will be heard because they are going to slip us that piece of paper with 30 signatures and said, something's not right. That's what I really like about that process. And the flip side of it is too, that if it is good for the town, and if it is good for the people, then great. We don't have to worry about the referendum and we can get it through because like you've said, not every annexation is for development. So that's personally why I loved that piece of it. And for me, I know folks saw that as anti-democratic. I thought it was very democratic. So I
still disagree. There's nothing more democratic than a vote in an election.
But there is still a vote option. It still goes to a vote.
Yeah, I know it's 30
Just
people.
a second. I do
but it
want
just
Nicole,
seems-
Tanya, I'd like Nicole to finish talking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say other than that was my perspective on it. And, I wanted folks to be able to hear that and know that absolutely there is still that voting mechanism that's built into this in this very detailed process. And that's why I can still stand behind it. So.
Thank you.
Where I'm at in the conversation is, I feel like Eric has worked harder on this than any of us in town. And I feel like Eric has done, countless hours of volunteer work, working on this, thinking about the pros and cons, doesn't have, anything other than the town's best interest at heart. And for me, I feel we have 3 really good draft ordinances in front of us. And I personally would like to hear Eric make his final pitch and ask for our support and present his arguments as where you want to go with it. And then we can bounce off Eric a little bit if need be. So if you're up for that, Eric.
Sure, I just wanted to make sure Tom had a chance to say something before.
No, I want to hear.
Well, I'll tell you that I agree with Trustee Corvalin. My preference is an automatic election. However, my intention is to move forward with the version with special referral petition process. And the reason for that is because I think that is that represents the collaborative effort. That represents the compromise effort. That represents incorporating the feedback that we've gotten from so many different corners of this town on this process over the last 3 years. And I think that's more important to go back to the point that was made about process. I think process is more important than outcome a lot of the time, because outcomes, as I always say, they are slippery, right? They are slippery things. They're hard to pin down, and they don't really end up how you think they will. But if we can go through a process, again, that this is words from a member of the public who spoke earlier. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly who said it. I think it was two people who said it. Josh said it, yeah. But that process is absolutely crucial to ensuring that we can stand behind our decision making. And so the process by that led us to this version of the ordinance is the reason why I would like to put that one forward, because I think that that is important to show that we can work together as a board, that we can collaborate, that we don't have to just win our votes by one, right? But that we can be together on something every now and again and kind of show that unity for the town, I think is really important. And that's really my only pitch at this point, right? I think my reasons for wanting the ordinance itself in place are clear. I've made those points, I think, numerous times. But if we're going between the three here, the one that I would like to choose is the collaboration and compromise option. It's not exactly what I want.
I don't think it's exactly what everyone wants.
It's not
and
exactly
that's
what everyone
exactly how the Constitution was created.
Precisely. So I, in the spirit of collaboration, in the spirit of good faith, so that we can trust each other moving forward when we're discussing other important topics for the town, I think that we should go with Ordinance 834 version with special referral petition process. And I do want to say it was Jesse's idea. It was Trustee Seaver's idea, not mine. So, over a cup of chai, we kind of figured this one out, that we could get to a point where we could responsibly pass an ordinance with a deadline looming. So I'm pretty proud of that particular conversation.
And I think there's been such a frustration in the past with previous boards of just not getting anything done. And I would like that, as other board members have said, this can still be amended. We do intend to have continued conversations with public. So in May, I may take you up on being your BOT liaison for the public committee. So, because it is important, the process, the communication, the ongoing conversation is super important.
Eric, you ready to make a motion?
I'd like to at least make a comment because I haven't said boo. So I also was for the popular vote, the triggered vote. And I think when we voted, it was Eric, Tanya, and I, all three of us stated 10 acres or less. Someone needs to be let in. Just one sec, Erica. Thank you. She's presenting next. So I guess. So I was for the triggered vote because I felt like it was part of the, it is part of the democratic process and ensured the town, including myself and, my wife and my friends and everyone who lives here would have a vote in a say in what does or doesn't happen. And I think that what this did was found a good common ground where, it's pretty achievable. And I think what I like about it too is how that was written before. We would have had to have a vote, or we would have been forced to have an election, pay for it, wait for it, put it on, even for an annexation. And I can't come up with an example at the moment, but there was some type of annexation that everyone in town wanted. We still would have had to go through the election if it was 10 acres or change density. So what I like about this is if it's something everyone wants, you can't even get 30 signatures, then we're all behind it and we don't have to waste our time, not waste our time, but spend our time, holding things up for an election. And also, made notes here. Also, this could be triggered with something smaller than 10 acres, or something smaller, something that doesn't change density. If there's something else that people don't like in it, so even if it's one house, but there's something about it that people don't want, 30 signatures is all you need, and it goes to a popular election. So it kind of actually puts leverage in both directions. It arguably maybe doesn't, it's more efficient where it needs to be, but it can be used almost in any situation, and it's pretty achievable. And we've talked about the BOT members could be the ones to sign it, because where it falls, it's in step 15, 27, or step 13, I guess, step 17, I can't remember, but it falls right after a BOT approval. So you would go through all these processes of applications, BOT, planning commission, public hearings, go into the county, back to the BOT, it would only be after a BOT even approves something that this would be needed. And then the next step, and we would actually, our plan is that this 30-page, this 30-line signature petition page would be given to the applicant in their packet, knowing that this is right there for people to use, that once we had voted, say we'd approved it, whether you voted to approve or not, or voted to decline as a BOT member, the vote's done, so we don't have to recuse ourselves from anything. So, you know, we could be signatures on the line too. So all those things to me, made it seem like a good compromise and a good check, a reasonable check that could be used in different ways or not used. So that being said, I'm ready for a motion.
I move to approve Ordinance 834, repealing and replacing Chapter 15 of the Nederland Municipal Code on annexations and providing for special process for signed petition referring annexation ordinance to election.
I second.
Maisie, when you're ready.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
No.
and Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the motion passes. Thanks, everybody. I know this is kind of a, it's a big deal, and I think a lot of, there's a lot of ideas about it, and we're hoping one of the things we want to do, intend to do, is really get out there over the next few months and have public town halls, public meetings, public hearings, and public education, and really get people to understand what this is all about, and really kind of break it down, because it's there for all of us to read, but it's kind of hard to read these things sometimes, and it's kind of hard to understand them. So I think we need to do a lot. If it's not understood yet, it's kind of on us to help people understand. That's the nature of communication. So thanks, y'all. We're going to say we need a break, or how are we doing?
I'd like to take a break, and before I do, if I could make some comments on the previous action item. I want to address Tanya and also the public, members of the public who spoke out. You know, I know many of you and have worked with you and care about you all and your point of view on these matters. And I was mostly moved, I think, or sparked, I would say, the spark of insight that came about in the conversation with Eric over chai at Kathmandu the other day, was really in response to Eric Davis's comments on how the referendum. So the public has currently the right to put forth a referendum on any item that the BOT is considering, and it requires by Colorado state law for 60 signatures. And you know, my initial thought when I pushed back on the automatic election trigger was that we already have a process in place for forcing an election, and so there's no need for us to add that additional restriction on a potential good application and a favorable application. And if there's, you know, enough pushback that people are that disheartened and disillusioned with the public process that 60 people want to have a vote, then they can. So that was my take on it initially, and why I was arguing in opposition to an automatic public election. And then Eric Davis wrote in and he made a comment about how that was undue burden on the public to have to round up those 60 signatures. And I thought, yeah, there's kind of a point there. 60 signatures is a bit much, and it is difficult to round up 60 signatures for anything. So therefore, you know, casually in conversation, Eric and I landed on, well, what if we just reduced the threshold to force that vote to 30 signatures instead? And seemed like it had legs as a notion. The reason I like it is because A, you know, a project like Kayla's, for example, will get a lot of attention. It already has, and it's not even before us. So it's just it's a hypothetical at this point. We don't even know if we'll ever consider something from Kayla. So if she does come forth with a petition, there's going to be a long and extensive process that the town will engage in. It will involve the entire town. The details and the contents of Kayla's application will morph and be affected by that public process tremendously. And if after all that is said and done, the project is still that disappointing to 30 people in town that they're willing to force a townwide election, 30 signatures is not hard to round up, and it will have indicated that those 30 people have been engaged in participating and not heard throughout that entire process, to the extent that their comments and requests have not been integrated into the process. So that is actually, for me, it's a slight pushback on the public and saying, hey, democracy is not something that is a given. You know, it's something that we all have to work for all the time. And it's not fun to come to these meetings all the time. It's often fun, but many times it's not. So we're working hard, and Eric Davis worked really hard to put that statement together that he did. Josh and Rich and your neighbors and Susan and everybody who's written in and come to the meetings, that's hard work. We had 21 public comments today, which was, you know, all well thought out statements saying why we need to do it this way. And so it's a lot easier to sign a petition. So we're already 2/3 of the way there to just signing your petition and saying, hey, we can do a public election. And so so for all those reasons, Tanya, I respect that you were the declining vote, and I wanted to put forth those arguments, or, you know, these counterpoints, so that you could take all this into consideration and say, hey, I do care about democracy and I care about public engagement, and I think we have a good outcome here. And I like that we can also vote on small petitions, like Billy said, for one house, for example. Even that could get muddled, and we could not do good planning, and the public can hold us accountable with 30 signatures. It's not hard to round up, in my opinion. So that's all I have to say.
One minor addition to that I think is really important to note is that, you know, the 60 votes that you can use, the 60 signatures that you can use to trigger a referendum on anything that we do, right, all the time, that's always an option, right? That didn't have a special place in this process, right? That would have to have been done by a community member kind of on their own accord.
And they would have had to know about it.
Right.
Yes.
We have made room, specific space, where the annexation ordinance, if one were to be passed, could not take effect until that allotted time of 30 days after its publication had passed, right? Without a referendum petition being submitted with 30 signatures. So not only did we reduce the number of signatures required, but we also made a very specific space, right, for that process to occur, and mandated the town to notice the public about that process. And I think that that's a really important part of it. So it's not just the reduction from 60 to 30, but it's that we mandate that we notify the public and we create space for it and delay the effect of the ordinance until that whole process is played out.
And we could expand on the trend and do that for other important decisions as well, and say, hey, we want to reduce the threshold to force a public election.
Good point. Just so everyone knows, that 60 is not a random number. I mean, it's kind of rounded, but we have 1,200 registered voters in the city, in town of Nederland. And so the state law is 5% of the registered voters at the time of the last election. So 60 is that 5%. And what we did was cut it in half, but we just made it a solid number of 30 now. So if the town grows, it's actually a smaller percentage than 2.5. So.
One final question before we leave this. This is for you and for the clerk. Did we formally replace Chapter 15 in your motion? Okay, good.
Oh, he won't.
We sure did.
He wasn't going to quote that thing.
Also want to say congratulations and well done, Eric. And
Yeah,
thank you for all
thank
your
you.
hard work.
Thank you.
So we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll come back for action item 6.3. Thanks.
But they could. I've seen it happen there.
I mean,
we would be known that.
the fundamental reality that we're dealing with, that annexation is part of state law. We don't add to that process, then we're just doing the vagaries of state law. And it's not that well defined.
Well, I wish you guys had at least discussed putting in the trailer. I think that would be, and as I said, it's not just your thing.
Yeah. I don't take it.
You were saying,
I'm not against it, really, but I don't think that's what it is.
well, and I understand that you were trying to get it to pass. Nicole, that's what I named my first daughter.
Oh, no way. Was she Nicole Marie?
No,
Okay, that's really fun.
she doesn't have a middle name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I almost named her Nicole's son, Nicole Bridget, but I figured they could pick their own middle names. I didn't get Elizabeth middle name either.
Nice.
Well,
That's a great idea. You can pick your own middle name when you get old enough.
but they haven't, either one of them.
No. Yeah, probably.
So I'm proud of my middle name now, because I'm not Catholic, but my middle name is Francis. So I have given you here my business card.
Lovely.
Oh, so formal.
So public engagement, so these is its own committee.
It was.
From the Envision 2030.
Yeah.
From the Envision 2030.
I really want to get the comprehensive plan going.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was. You said that we had so much work in on.
Yeah.
Just
well, we'd be like.
She moved up to, you
Well,
know.
as I said in one of my comments, file and forget. You know, we went into a lot of detail about how to create affordable housing in town, using alternative housing, kinds of things we're looking for, and creating housing. That was the housing commission. Then I was on the public engagement.
We're on.
I was at Parks and Rec, and then off to Arts and Culture. And Susan suggested we start a group for arts and culture, but Barb Hart kind of took it over, and now I think it died. So.
Well, I know the DDA is doing the public art.
Oh,
You know, Barb's
yeah.
the chair of that, so.
And I think that's a little bit worrisome to me, that a group that's not really being monitored by the public.
It's not my favorite process, but that's what I'm for another
I
day.
think we all have certain ideas about the DDA that, but this group still meets.
Well, we're all friends, kind of.
Oh,
It was.
so
me-
over drinks, I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So Susan Wagner, who spoke today on the
Yep.
phone and was part of it, and then Deb Andrea, who also probably made a comment. She's really good at computer stuff, networking stuff, change, like action. I'm really good at knowing where people look for stuff, like at the post office.
And I think Susan's really good at articulating, hey, you know, in Louisville or Bloomfield or wherever, they have a place on their webpage, and we drew out a whole webpage that you guys could adopt. I was just sure that the webpage. But I mean, this stuff's not just science, where you have a section, ongoing debate, ongoing projects, past discussions, voting on Barker. So we don't have to keep going on the same thing over and over. Pending or current stuff, annexation, IGA. So if you want to know what's going on, so you go to the agenda, pick it through it, going into the packet, trying to enlarge that stuff, you know, and I mean, it's really quite user friendly. And it could be, and I think that we can.
Yeah, no, we can't build under that. Just don't know that that's going to be enough.
A little bit of history, that whole valley, if you go back to when Barker Reservoir was built, Barker Reservoir was really meant to be built right there.
That I just have learned that in the last couple of months. I didn't
And
know
it
that.
changed to where it is now, but that whole valley would have been underwater.
When then someone, I think it was Rich, that explained to me that they were the way of the glacial makeup of the ground underneath, and they realized it wouldn't hold the water.
That's right.
Couldn't do it.
It's pure quartz. That, our property is that same way. It's glacial rock and it's very spongy.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, bad place for a reservoir.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, you've got my email and I probably won't be a pain in your butt.
Oh, no, you reach out anytime, and I'm sorry, the last 2 weeks, we just had we've had stuff going on with the family that's made it harder for me to keep up. And I apologize, I didn't reply to all your emails.
But you know, the other thing that Jared told me, he said, you know, he said, if I think they have water rights, he said, ask them specifically what to.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And-
they're water, so that would seem to make sense. Because I was like looking, I stopped one day, I was looking across up the canyon. There's never been fire.
Yeah, that's right. It's been- yeah. All right.
Well,
Again,
thanks,
well, you have a nice Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Are you,
Yeah.
presume you're a skier?
I am, yeah.
You do it outdoor? Or
Yeah, we do. I do, my wife, we do down, I'm telemark and a cross country skier. My wife works at the Nordic Center and I coached in middle school. And then we turned their kids rolling. I have a 9-year-old and a 5.
Well, my youngest one is 46.
Ah, awesome.
And, it's nice now they have kids and, what they basically said to us when the kids were real small, the grandkids, they said, you're a lot different person today than you were with us.
Yeah.
And I told one of my daughters, I said, the reason being is because I don't have responsibility anymore. It's okay to have ice cream for breakfast.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You've heard it.
Oh, yeah, no.
Thanks again.
You bet. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. You guys, we can bring it back when you're ready. Hold on. I'll get. During and after the. Explained it.
Because I was talking to people and I didn't get to the bathroom.
Oh, go for it, yeah. Who am I to hurry, people? I'm chronically late. Thank you very much. Well, I know, but it goes against my nature. I hate being hurried.
Well, you're not being hurried, you're hurrying.
Yeah, that's true. I'm true. I'm working on it. Cool. No, yeah, that was great. And I appreciated that final, like when you guys talked after the book. Oh, really hoping for a second. Better. It allows people to not have to vote. Like, she just wouldn't. I mean, she's in a bad headspace. I feel like have to work on it.
I feel like it's going to force town planners and the process to be more accountable. Yeah, we're going to integrate feedback more so that we can try to avert a vote at the end.
Yeah, that's going to be our goal the entire time.
Right,
It's
stop to do it, is to do a good process.
So that
Everyone's content.
Yeah, and if we think that it's gonna be an election, it's probably gonna fail. We're just gonna not-
Right, yeah, right. We have
We
armies,
gotta come back next year.
armies of people here saying no, no, no through the planning commission and the DOT.
I
The
thought,
vote, the vote has happened.
I thought I might be able to change Tanya's mind. If I would have said all that before we voted, but I felt like we already had the votes.
Hopefully she'd listen to all that.
I tried.
I don't know. I'll ask because they have paid attention to whether she stayed.
Oh, do you think she might have bounced out?
Well, she said she was trying to do it early, so we moved Erica. Erica was supposed to present. We moved her back, or Hunter. We moved Hunter to the end, so she has guests.
Yeah.
Tanya does a lot, and she will. I don't know.
That when the dust settles and we talk with her, she'll realize.
Had some significant.
Yeah. Awesome. Well done. That's stressful.
Were any good memes exchanged during that period?
They did?
This.
Welcome back, everybody. We are into action item 6.3 to 2023 BOT meeting dates.
And I don't know if Trustee Corvalon said it, she had to jump off, so she's no longer with us. It is the group in the room. All right, time to set your meeting dates for next year. So you obviously meet on the first and third Tuesday of the month. I have those all listed. We have the second Tuesday of the month set for work sessions to be held only as needed. The one area of the one issue, quote unquote, is that currently there's a meeting set for the 4th of July, assuming y'all don't want to come here. So the question before you is, do you want to cancel that meeting and just have one meeting in July? Or would you like to use the second Tuesday, the work session, as a regular meeting date and have two back to back?
And we can't do the meeting on a float at the parade.
Yeah, we can. That sounds great. We have a new gator, a new tractor. We can all do it there. It's a new addition to our family. We're going to have a post soon enough.
Was that a
yeah.
motion? Yeah.
That is the motion. Meeting on the float. So we do need to know what you want to do with that meeting date. When there's a deviation from the typical schedule, we do need to have a resolution that notes what we are doing with that respective meeting date.
So the 4th of July is a Tuesday.
4th of July is a Tuesday.
I mean, I personally don't really care. I have a meeting on the 4th of July, but I think probably most of us don't want to, so let's cancel it.
I expect that would be a poor choice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
it is
cancel
a
it.
town holiday, observed holiday, so town is closed.
Yeah,
So
you
town
guys
staff,
won't be there.
town staff have the day off.
Do we have to vote
We're
on?
running this meeting on your own then. Good luck with
No,
the system.
I'm
Do we
fine
have to
with that.
vote on that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have your motion for what you're going to do so we can come back or at least direct staff to draft the resolution outlining the 2023 meeting dates.
Actually, real quick, this is a this is an action item, so we need to comment, public comment as well. So let's just do it sequentially. So is there any clarifying questions on what we're being asked as we look at the calendar for 2023? You know, everything's pretty straightforward. The only real possible change it would be July 4th. Any clarifying questions? If not, I'll go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this action item of the 2023 BOT meeting dates? Anyone online, you have any public comments on them? Okay, bringing it back in, let's go ahead and open it up for discussion. The real question was around July 4th. You know, if we were to cancel it, which if we cancel it, do we just go with one scheduled open, regular BOT meeting in July and have July 11th as a work session, or otherwise, schedule two? What's everyone thinking?
My preference is to cancel it.
Agreed.
Cancel it.
I'm all for that cancel culture. So yeah, let's so I make a motion. Actually, do we have to fully make motion?
Might as well that you adopt the meeting dates as outlined in the AIM with the cancellation of July 4th.
Okay. Actually, real quick, any other comments about the rest of the year? Anything else stand out for anyone?
Good.
Okay. So I make a motion that we adopt the dates as they are listed in AIM, and that we cancel the July 4th meeting and just have it set so we have one BOT meeting, one regularly scheduled BOT meeting on July 18th, and then a optional potential possible work session on July 11th.
Second.
Macy?
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the one thing,
passes.
thank you for that. The one thing I would say is the WebEx calendar invites are quite messy because of all the changes that have happened. So it's going to be cleaner for me just to cancel them all and then re-invite you. So don't be alarmed when you get some cancellations. It doesn't mean you can't show up.
Don't get it.
You mean just starting January?
To come back.
You mean just starting January 3rd? You got to re-up the whole.
To add in Trustee Sterling, Trustee Severs separately each time. They keep falling off, so it's cleaner for me just to wipe them and then start over.
Great.
And ideally, you'll have an appointed trustee to add into the mix.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. So we have moved through our action items and made decisions on those. And so now we're into our discussion item for the night. We have one discussion item, 7.1, the solar ordinance. And Erica Thorley, our sustainability coordinator for a very short amount of time, for a little bit longer, she's going to present tonight. And she has some folks, I think Whitney and maybe Larry online as well.
Is Larry online? Okay. We also have Melody Baumhover online as well. So Larry, if you're out there, please chime in, let us know. Will do. Thank you, Miranda. So hello, everyone. My name is Erica Thorley. I am the Sustainability Coordinator for the town of Nederland. And finally, this is coming to you all. This has been a long time coming. The conversation started about a year ago, if not longer. And we are going to be exploring the recommended best practices to remove zoning barriers for the town of Nederland as it pertains to solar and rooftop solar as well as ground mounts. Next slide. Oh, I didn't know there was features. So yeah, so some background. So first off, this presentation was created by Cynthia Baki, who was the Deputy Zoning Administrator until recently. And so she really chaired this subcommittee. She started it, she asked folks to attend and join the group, and then she really pulled together a lot of the materials and the research behind this presentation and the work that we all did. So with that in mind, the group met 5 times. You can see the dates on the left there from April to June. And then we had more informal conversations after that based on feedback from other boards. And the subcommittee members consisted of Mayor Billy Giblin and Trustee Blakemore, Karen Blakemore, who is no longer, she actually resigned from the subcommittee at some point to focus on transportation. Myself, Melody Baumhover, the co-chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board, Larry Tassiday, who's the Sustainability Advisory Board member, as well as the chair of the Zero Waste Subcommittee, of which that grant was accepted, by the way, side note. Whitney Owens, who is on the call tonight, she is a solar installer and also a local in Nederland. She lives on Hurricane Hill and built her own house. And then Cynthia Baki. Next slide. So these are the recommended definitions from SolSmart. So we were awarded bronze designation from SolSmart about a year ago. And that was really from the efforts of Cynthia and Garrett McDaniel, Sustainability Coordinator before my time. And these really are definitions that they recommend, kind of verbatim. So I won't read them to you, but if you have any issues with these, we do have access to SolSmart and we can ask them questions about, why their recommendations are as they are in this presentation. So let me step back for a second. So the main goal of updating our solar code is because we don't have a lot of mention of solar in the current code. And they have found that when you have more specific mention of solar in your code, you have more adoption of solar with your residents and various entities throughout town. So that's one of the big goals of doing this. Another one is that it opens us up to receiving silver or gold designation from SolSmart. And so it's just making us more of a solar-friendly community, which has lots of benefits. Right? Financial independence potentially for those residents, and then also for reaching our renewable energy goals. Climate change, one of those two. So this is the, let's go back. No worries. So we wanted to break it down to 3 different sizes for solar installs. The first is a large scale, and so that's going to be a ground mount that occupies more than 40,000 square feet of surface area, and it's the principal use of the lot. We also have medium scale, which is similar, and it's going to be 40,000 square feet of surface or less. That's the principal use of the lot. The really distinguishing factor between medium, large, and small scale is going to be that small scale is a ground-mounted system that occupies up to 1,750 square feet of solar panel surface or solar panels that are mounted solely on existing roof. Small-scale solar energy systems are considered an accessory use on the lot, not the primary purpose of the lot. And that's a big distinguisher. The only size limitation that we discussed for rooftop mounts and ground-mounted systems that are accessory use are the fire code pathways that need to exist for them to be up to code. The roof mount system, the definition is that it's structurally mounted to or ballasted on the roof of a building or structure. So we'll move to the next slide and we can talk about these a bit further. So because of the large and medium scale ground mount systems, we decided that these types of systems would require a special review use, and they would need to go through that process. So they would need to go before the Planning Commission and then, of course, you all for approval, and as well as public notice and public comment. And that's a big deal, right? That's going to be a pretty different use of that land and that space if it's the primary use of that lot. Next slide. So one of the most contentious things that we discussed during our time meeting as a subcommittee was the idea of building height and solar. So what we decided was that roof-mounted systems must be mounted as flush as possible to the roof, and they need to have, depending on proper solar orientation, which is important for the viability of a solar system, they cannot exceed the height of the roof line and consequently the maximum height permitted in the zoning district by no more than 5 feet. And we decided 5 feet after some research of other municipalities, and that's really kind of a well-recognized number as far as above height. And Billy, please jump in at any point.
Well, we also specified it was kind of if you dig into it, technically it kind of makes a big difference as measured from the highest point of the roof deck. So any kind of pitched roof, but generally the panels would stay below the highest, the peak of the roof. And then you can't really get, and Whitney can be clearer with you than I can. Generally you're not going to have panels going right there to and above the peak, but you might, and you have that extra 5 feet. And then it also applies, so for a flat roof, like say a commercial building or whatever, a flat roof, they're still gently sloped. They're not quite flat, but from the highest point on the roof deck, and the reason we put in the roof deck is generally there's a parapet, kind of a little wall that goes around the perimeter, and that would, I had said if we keep it to the roof deck, highest point of the roof deck, then whatever the height is of that parapet would be subtracted basically from the 5 feet. So if you've got a 35-foot flat ceiling building and the parapet's 2 feet high off the roof deck, then it's really only another 3 feet higher you can go above. It'd still be 5 feet above the roof deck, but it would just go 3 feet higher than the top of the parapet. So we were trying to make use of the parapet to kind of help to minimize going above 35 feet.
We'll talk about this further, but that was a question from the BZA when we brought that to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, was specifically flat roofs. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And so that's why we incorporated that from the roof deck comment Billy just added. And so 2 other things to add into that. So we talked about pre-existing buildings. So that 35 feet is in code as far as the height, and we would allow them to go to no more than 40 feet tall. And if they wanted to go higher, they'd have to go through that review process. Additionally,
the variance review process.
Yes.
With the BZA.
And additionally, for new builds, we wanted to do the same. And Whitney's online, and I just wanted to ask her to step in if she's comfortable and share kind of that conversation and why it was important to think about new builds and still allowing that additional 5 feet.
Sure. The goal of, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. WebEx doesn't always like me. So the goal of this allowing solar panels to stick up above the 35-foot maximum is just to generally on principle say that if a building can be 35 feet tall, the fact that the solar panels have to tilt up and poke up a little bit from the surface of the roof doesn't mean you can't have solar if your building is already 35 feet tall. We generally just want to not include solar panels as part of the height of the roof, much like you wouldn't include like a plumbing vent that sticks up out of the roof and say, well, your house has to be a foot taller. You can't have plumbing on the top in your house. Just to not include the solar panels for the most part in the height of the building. We did make that 5-foot limitation so that you can't build an enormous tower of solar on top of your house. But in general, we just wanted to not include the height of the solar panels that tip up a little bit from the surface as part of the building height. And for new construction, if you were to include the height of the solar panels tipping up, you have just made the rules for building a house with solar much more restrictive than the rules for building a house without solar. You just said that if solar panels tilt up like 2 feet off of the surface of your roof and they do count in the overall building height, then if you want to put solar on your new house that has a flat roof, your house can be 32 feet tall or 33 feet tall. If you don't want to put solar on it, you can build your house 35 feet tall, which means you just made the rules for houses with solar worse, which is not the goal. The goal is to mostly just to bring solar up in the code because we didn't really have much mention of it at all, if any, and also just to make solar sort of officially allowed and make it, try to not add extra restrictions. And so making a new build have more restrictions if you have solar on it than if you don't was counter to that purpose. And imagine if somebody has their flat roof house like fully designed, the architect is done with it, it's stamped by an engineer, everything is ready to go, they've got a big hole in the ground and they said, maybe I want solar on it, but the house is already up to the maximum height. You wouldn't want the rules to be such that, nope, either you need to redesign your entire house just after you've started building it, or you just can't have solar until it's done. That wouldn't be, that's not what we're after either. So that's why we wanted to include new construction in that same rule, with the basic principle of which is if your solar panels tilt up off of the surface of a flat roof, as long as they're not more than 5 feet tall, they don't count in the building height.
Yeah, the one thing, because I think Cynthia and I were saying, well, this is code, it's got to be 35 feet, they need to be able to design for that. And I think Whitney had the good point, which ultimately helped, which made me change my mind, which is that ultimately if you're holding someone to that 35 feet and they've either already built the building's design and they're underway or they want it 35 feet, they might just say, well, then forget solar. We'll just build the building and not have solar. And I was like, oh, that doesn't do much to prohibit solar or that doesn't do much to, promote solar. So that was good logic.
Exactly. We don't want to make it so that having solar on your house makes other things harder.
Thanks, Whitney and Mayor Billy. And so to get back to the presentation, the maximum height would not exceed allowed accessory height for the zoning district. So moving on to lot coverage, this was another big conversation we had, and we did a tour to Jack's Solar Garden in Longmont this summer, I believe. Do you remember when it was? July or August?
July.
July. Okay. We did that in July, and it's an incredible agrivoltaic system down there. And an agrivoltaic garden is a PV garden paired with agriculture. So that can be animals, or it can also be crops. And so it's something that's gaining a lot more awareness and a lot more development, actually, throughout the state. There's more support from the state at this point. But with that in mind, we decided that if a ground mount system would be exempt from lot coverage only if there was vegetation below the panels. If there is a concrete pad, that would be in addition to the lot coverage for that parcel. So, and that's to promote not having concrete pads underneath these solar arrays and actually having vegetation, because they do make crops more resilient. There's a lot of crops that actually do better under solar panels that they've done research on. There's a few that don't, like squash, for whatever reason, doesn't like solar panels. But it also increases the retention of water in the soil, so it reduces the need for irrigation. There's a lot of benefits. Here's an example of, next slide. Here's an example of Jack's solar farm down in Longmont. If you haven't been to it, I highly recommend doing a tour. It's really neat, and Byron is a character. It's actually his grandfather's farm, and he had the brilliant idea of pairing it with solar, and he had to actually go to Boulder County many, many times to actually get them to approve his solar farm development. It's really paving the way for a lot more developments like this. Next slide. So as far as setbacks, they would follow district accessory setbacks, and it would be important as far as vision clearance to make sure that traffic impacts are kept in mind. Next slide. There has been some criticism as far as the glare from solar panels, and that is not accurate. So solar panels are actually designed to retain as much sun as possible, so they actually have less glare than windows. So because of that, we've asked that they are exempt from performance standards. Next slide. So here's some feedback. So this presentation, in some form of it, was brought to the Planning Commission, the Sustainability Advisory Board, and the BZA. It was brought to the BZA in early July, actually July 14th of this past summer. And the BZA's comment was what I mentioned earlier, what about flat roofs? And their concern was the vision shed, or view shed, I believe it's called, and making sure that we didn't ruin people's viewscape from their home. And so we talked about that again as far as the decking. Tell me again, Billy, the language.
Oh,
The roof decking.
the roof deck.
Yep, for flat roofs.
Oh, yeah, because well, there was a bit of yeah, I think, well, we talked about the view shed, but I think I'm trying to remember there was a couple things they talked about and the parapet helps, on a flat roof would help hide some of the, would help hide
some
whatever.
additional
Yeah,
height.
can't think of the word I want to say, but you wouldn't be able to see the entire array. But then someone, the liaison to the to the BZA was saying, well, they need to be like that they don't have the structure and they need to be adhered. I'm having a hard time with English today, apparently, but they need to be put onto the parapet around but Whitney kind of, that doesn't turn out to be the case. I mean, you can put them on the roof deck as long as the structure can handle, is built to handle the extra load.
Yeah.
I can't remember specifically what their other concerns were.
I think that was the main one of the discussion and reviewing that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the Planning Commission, there was concerns. Everything was good for them as far as these recommendations, with the exception of the building height exemption. And their concern was that the solar system could be planned to avoid going over the maximum height. And then if they did, they would go for a variance from height standards. So that's something to consider tonight, and your thoughts on that. SAB, when given this presentation, really wanted to see all of the recommendations brought forth as is, and really didn't have a concern about that height issue because of what we've already discussed. We don't want to have limitations to solar. We'd like someone to build a maximum height and offset their energy load of that large building. Next slide. That's it.
I think we got some slides cut off of that, Miranda, because the BZA slide was on there before as well as some other things. So anyways.
We had a, are you saying in your packet?
No, I just remember last time that was shown.
We had
I saw it with
amended it
everything.
slightly.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, so
I think that's the meat. That's everything that really.
Okay, I'd love to open it up to Mayor Billy, Larry, Melody, and Whitney if you have additional comments before we open it up to discussion.
And I guess I just want to remind you, sorry. I just really quick, I just want to remind you the question before the board is, do you direct staff to begin to work on an ordinance? And I think one of our clarifying questions is that height piece. But that is the question, is if you're ready for us to start drafting this.
Got it. A couple of questions. First, did you look at batteries at all? Storage batteries in addition to or along with solar? Was it something you considered, and should something like that be part of our policy?
Good
did
question.
not for the most
Defer.
talked about batteries because it's Colorado and they have to go inside. And since we were only addressing zoning considerations, what people put in their basements doesn't have anything to do with zoning for the most part. So we mostly didn't.
I guess the second question then is, how do we get from bronze to gold? And do batteries have a place in that? What's the scoring metric that they use?
Good question. And I don't have a good answer for you at this time.
It's not necessarily about the build, it's about reducing barriers to it. So I don't think, focusing on batteries has anything to do with it. It's about making sure our code is inclusive. That's what's going to get us. That's what gets us to silver. And then I believe what gets us to gold is then further information dissemination and encouragement of the community to actually build. But the biggest designations are about removing barriers. And so just really quick, for bronze, in order to get bronze, we had to ensure Safe Built. All of Safe Built's inspection teams were well versed in all the nuances to solar inspections. Town staff had to go through a series of trainings. We had to put some stuff on our website. There's all these kind of designations, but it's all about getting the information out there and encouraging people to do solar and making sure that we limit the barriers. So I believe the other thing to gold is 2-day turnaround permitting time.
Wow. Yeah, I forgot about
Yes.
Are there any other barriers that we're aware of at this point?
Permitting. And Safe Built's on board. There was a conversation about whether there could be a third party that integrated into Safe Built, and that didn't quite work out. But Dan Wester is in support. Obviously, we've got some staffing pieces we need to work through, so we have the internal pieces to guide. But they do recognize that across the board, most municipalities want a faster turnaround. Currently, it's 10 business days. They aim for 5. But we still are seeing like quite a bit of back and forth on those plans. So trying to make it where you submit, you've got a checklist, you know what's needed, and we can permit very quickly.
Yeah, so just to clarify, this is the biggest hurdle between bronze and silver, and then from silver to gold would be additional hurdles. I just wanted to bring it back. We had somebody online trying to comment, so I just wanted to open that up again if anyone had anything else to add to that presentation.
Thanks, Erica. This is Melody Baumhover, co-chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board. I don't have a whole lot to add other than I know the building height was even kind of a hurdle for me to get over, but recognizing that, both philosophically solar panels are not a part of the building structure itself. And then secondly, that we really would deter developers from installing solar, which is the people we really want installing solar more than anyone else. That really leaned me to the other side to say that we did want to go that route. And SoulSmart has, a bunch of the language for town to use to write this ordinance. So it should be fairly simple. And I think that was one of the bigger sticking points. So just echoing everything that was said by Whitney, and so thankful that she was on the subcommittee to help us, and that she's here tonight, and for everybody who was there. So thanks.
Thanks, Melody.
So I guess, is Jennifer Madsen still on? Okay, I guess the question then is for you, because the motion is or what we're supposed to decide is pretty straightforward. How close is what we've done here to being able to draft an ordinance?
Very close. And to Melody's point, the language is already out there. It's really just making some amendments to Chapter 16.
Okay. Well done.
This all looks great. I guess the building height issue is the thing that we need to kind of talk about and resolve tonight, it seems, because I think the rest of it makes a lot of sense to me, and I have no objections, and I appreciate the information. How many buildings in town are at the 35 foot height at this point?
We were arguing 6. I mean, I feel
Right.
like that's the number in my head. It was like you'd have a hard time walking around and, you know.
Yeah, it's really minimal.
And I'd also point out that if a new build were to come in and build at 35 feet, it's likely that it would be subject to a PUD or similar. Because if you're building a building of that height, it's probably has more than one unit in it if it's residential, and probably is an increase of density. And like there's lots of potential ways that
So I would
things
say
could happen.
no, like there's some proposals just recently came forward for commercial buildings, and they want to build the entire thing under use by right
Uh-huh.
and go up to 35 feet so as to not trigger any of that. So there is definitely interest among builders to just stick within code.
And
So-
that is only within the CBD.
No, 35 feet is
Okay,
everywhere.
that townwide. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure if there's another check on specific circumstances that could be obviously bad for a neighbor when it comes to building something 40 feet tall and putting a giant solar panel, for instance, in front of somebody's window.
Well, and that was the view shed. Now that I'm remembering, that's why I wish we had that slide. The BZA, that was their concern, was like kind of building more near residential and then something popping up higher than 35 feet and messing with the view. That was the view shed analysis they talked about. That concern. I mean, obviously, someone can build to 35 feet use by right as long as they're meeting the setbacks and everything.
Right.
But it was going higher that they were concerned with a need for a view shed analysis.
Yeah, and that, I mean, we looked into those in the past, view shed analyses on a kind of a similar project that was Little Bear Development, and there was not a very, what's the word? How to say it? I was not convinced that view shed analyses are particularly useful in all cases. They're they really only apply to the very particular perspective of like one window or person, right? Like you can't do a view shed analysis that accounts for everybody's view in a neighborhood who might have to look through that building, right? It's like they're not that useful. And so I'm not sure that view shed analysis is a great way to solve this particular problem. I think we should encourage solar personally, but I know that this is a very important issue to very many people in town. So I just want to be sensitive to that. Like building above 35 feet or whatever the height limit is really is important to folks. So I haven't heard like a clear reason why you would need to put a solar panel more than 5 feet above the roof. Like why is that necessary ever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just I mean, any kind of pitched roof, it's going to be moot and probably not going to be a problem, and everything's going to fall in below the peak anyways. It really ends up being those flat roofed buildings for the most part that, you know, they're going to be the issue. And, you know, if they have a parapet or if they don't, and then they go 5 feet from the roof deck, and that it's more about that neighbor, you know, to the north or whatever, you know, whatever, the neighbor to whichever direction is going to be impacted. And I think the thing that swayed me is like, well, if they're just going to say, well, forget it, I'm not going to do solar, then to me, the solar ordinance didn't really.
Yeah, that'd be a shame.
We don't have many flat roofs, do we?
But what if someone?
No, I think of it more for sake of commercial, but but I mean, some of the commercial buildings, mountain. I mean, yeah, if you look around.
I think the issue comes down to yes, somebody can build anywhere a 35-foot tall whatever, a commercial building, a house, whatever it is, and it could have a flat roof. And if it has a flat roof and is 35 feet tall, it's a 35-foot tall cube in somebody's view. And that 35-foot tall cube is going to impact their view. But the question here is, does having solar panels that, you know, sit up and tilt at an angle off of the roof of that, is that really worse? I mean, I don't think it is. That's an I statement. I'm sure there are other people who would disagree with me, but I think the issue is for the view is very minimal. Solar panels mostly don't even stick up 5 feet. We just chose 5 feet because that could allow solar thermal as well, which is much less common these days. but solar electric usually sticks up like a foot or two from the roof. And again, the principle is just to not include solar panels that have to be tilted up or should be tilted up on a flat roof from the overall height of the building, just to make it easier. I would expect that 35-foot tall cube of a building next to somebody's house has other things sticking up out of the roof. Like there will be plumbing vents that stick out, and they don't and shouldn't count as a part of the height of the building. They just poke up into the sky, same as the solar panels would. There will probably be more solar panels than plumbing vents, but the principle to me seems the same. And that we're not talking about building 40-foot tall buildings. We're talking about leaving the height of the building that you're allowed to build the same, whether or not you put solar panels on it, and allowing the solar panels to stick up a little bit higher.
Yeah, that's helpful to clarify that this is more about flat roofs more than anything else. Is there any reason why we don't just specify that this rule is for flat roofs? Like, why have it a blanket rule for all roofs?
Which is say 5 feet above the highest point of the roof deck, and that kind of covers it all. I mean, that's how we wrote. We kind of went back and forth.
Right, but if a pitched roof would never really need this, then why should we allow? We
Even
don't want.
even a flat roof has a little pitch.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
why I said the highest point.
I think calling something a flat roof isn't really helpful because it doesn't exist.
I'm sure they have some kind of term for it.
Low pitch, low angle, but
Ultimately, for sloped roofs, it used to be more common when solar panels themselves were much more expensive, and it was of like penultimate importance to get the solar panels pointed in the right direction being south and tilted at an appropriate angle. It was much more common to like build a contraption on top of a pitched roof to either like hold the solar panels up above the ridge or tilt them at an angle that was not the angle of the ridge. That's much less common now. I mean, working for a solar installer who installs several hundred systems a year, we haven't done it in 10 years, not even once for a pitched roof. But somebody could, if they really wanted to, like extend the solar panels up above the peak of their roof. It would be really hard up here with the wind. They would have to do some serious engineering, and it would be not worth their while. But it was easier to write the rules as the more general principle of the solar panels don't count as a part of the height. They can poke up a little bit higher if you want them to. And it's mostly an issue, like 99.999, like it will probably never ever happen that somebody wants to stick solar panels up above the peak of their peaked roof. But who knows?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find ways to mitigate the concerns of the PC and other people who might come out and say, we don't want this to pass unless you reduce this 5-foot thing. Like, just strategizing. If we say roofs of a certain pitch have this exemption, just leave it at that, right? Like a low pitch roof for a certain angle can go 5 feet above the 35-foot limit up to 40 feet. All other roofs have to make do with what they've got because they would anyway.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I'll say the one concern we had was if we just, because initially there was a push, just say 5 feet above everything, we're good to, just 40 feet. And it was like, there's going to be, there are people out there who don't want solar, who don't believe in solar, don't think it's a good idea. And, if they think we're just giving a blanket green light to all solar projects, and basically allowing them to, go above and beyond height limits of the code, then it would be on. The concern was that would be seen as unfair, and that we'd be favoring solar, and that these people would then have ammunition to say, this isn't a good way. So I do think it's important that we minimize this as much as possible. I mean, it was definitely, we anticipated it was going to be a challenging, the PC was going to be not like this, and we were right. But I appreciate their perspective because they're appreciate their perspective big time. So we do have to take that in consideration.
So it seems just slightly unnecessary to me to provide an exemption for roofs that would never use that exemption, right? Like that seems kind of weird lawmaking. Like why not just add the exemption for the type of roof that would need it?
Well, I don't know that they would never.
I mean, I guess we just heard 99.9%.
you know,
It would
I
never
can
happen.
see how 6 inches above the roof ridge could be a relatively common use case. I have solar panels on my roof and they're real close to the top, and you know, had the installation and the design conversation gone slightly different, they could have been slightly above, and then I would have gotten dinged or corrected by the town, which wouldn't have been too big a deal for me. But I am in favor of allowing a breach of the 35 feet for the sake of solar. And I think we're openly encouraging solar, and I think that there's nothing that we need to be shy about with that. And for the sake of renewable energy. And I think if someone wants to say, hey, I want to have wind above my 35 feet as well, then I think we could say, well, that's a good idea.
But that's another discussion.
That's another discussion.
I do have a question, and because Whitney brought up something that I thought was the case too, that all like plumbing, and maybe you'll know better, all plumbing vents, et cetera, don't really count towards the 35 feet, but I think I remember Cynthia correcting us and saying it does count, and maybe I'm wrong. Yeah,
What I remember that conversation is that there are some things that count as part of the building height, like I think she was saying like a large HVAC unit, that sort of thing. That's I don't want to misquote. There were some things that count and some things that don't.
that's right. I'll try to find it. It's actually in the code, and she just read it specifically. You're right. There were certain things that were okay, and other things were allowed to go higher. That's right.
Another potential compromise is to allow for an encroachment on the setback from the road, and you could mount it on the side of the building, for example. Instead of the height, if the height is too objectionable to the public or the planning commission, maybe we consider allowing to mount on the side of the building and then having that encroach, because people are going to want to build right up next to their setback requirement off the road, for example, or the adjacent property. And depending on which way is facing south, they could encroach and mount their solar panels on the side of the building. I'm not as in favor of that because I also like the idea of utilizing solar glazing on the south facing wall, and I would like to leave more options open. But I'm just saying, there's lots of different ways we could go about it. I'm in favor of approving the recommendations and moving on.
Okay, yeah, we talked about too. The one thing that does happen, as I've seen a lot with the developments, multifamily in cities, they'll use these solar panels as a shade. So they're going for passive solar, but you got to have an overhang. And as you're going down a flat, tall wall, right above each story, the solar panel can be integrated as your overhang, so you're getting the shading in the summer when you want it.
I just wanted to add something quickly. So in the current recommendations for building height, the first sentence is roof-mounted systems must be mounted as flush as possible to the roof. And maybe that's the language that we need to kind of open that door. So if someone does have a concern, they could push back on that and say, yeah, you're still within the 5 feet, but you're not as flush mounted as you could be given the roof line.
Right, and I guess the argument then would be as flush as possible to achieve what end, right? Like, right, so they could argue like, well, it's not actually possible because we're losing efficiency, right?
Yeah, it does. The next sentence is, in order to achieve proper solar orientation, panels may exceed the height of the roof line and consequently the maximum height permitted in the zoning district.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that's the language that would open the door potentially for some pushback.
Yep.
I don't know.
I mean, for me, if that has a little bit more precise language, like in terms of if there's a threshold for efficiency that says, well, if you're getting this much efficiency by mounting it flush, then that's what you have to do. Then I think that makes sense. Right?
Whitney, it's 15 to 30 degrees, right, for Nederland? Is that the orientation?
Yes, that is a wider range. Depends on how good you want it to be. 30 degrees is pretty great. I guess what we were going for with that language was if you have a sloped roof, go with that slope. If it's, even if it's only a 20-degree slope, or if it's a 45, those are, less ideal than 30, but it's worth it to have the panels mounted parallel to that sloped roof surface. But on a flat roof, you get really much less production pointing solar panels directly up at the sky for a couple of reasons. One, we don't live in the tropics. That's not where the sun is. The sun is to the south. And solar panels that are mounted flat on a flat roof don't get washed by the rain. They get scum buildup. And so they are made dirty and never get cleaned properly and produce much less that way. So the goal was to encourage people to mount flush on a sloped roof and not flush on a flat roof, which is what people do anyways. That is standard procedure all around. And we were just trying to codify that to some extent, that we're not encouraged to build crazy contraptions on top of a sloped roof, and you are encouraged to build tilt-ups on a flat roof.
Great. Yeah, I like 30 degrees and think it could just be in the language. Like if you can't achieve 30 degrees, you can go 5 feet above to achieve 30 degrees. If you can't achieve 30 degrees mounting flush, then you mount flush. Just saying, I think that's very hard to argue with.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by it, though, I guess. I mean,
but I'm
generally
in favor. I'm just trying to balance the issues people have.
I'd like to propose, I know we're not making a motion, but I'd like to propose that we encourage town staff to get to work on drafting an ordinance, and let's let the public process play out and see if there's major pushback from people on that, and we can make amendments as we go.
So should we,
with the 5 feet?
Maybe we,
with
we
the 5
instruct
feet allowance.
Jennifer to, Attorney Mattson, to draft the solar ordinance as put forth in this, by the
These
solar
recommendations.
subcommittee.
Yeah.
And then it's going to come back as, well, I guess this is a discussion item, but it's going to come back to us again and at some point as an action, but we'll get public input.
Yeah, and I can send an email to SoulSmart. They were trying to be here, but unfortunately she was sick tonight, and ask them about the 30 degrees as far as flat roofs and if they've had other communities do that. So, and we can get some more context there.
Yeah, because maybe they could help us with the language, because it just seems a little,
Yeah.
it'd be good to have clear language. Yeah.
I imagine we'll have it as a discussion item when they draft the ordinance. That's
true.
Would you agree? Yeah,
that's true.
And I would just want to say, Erica, thanks for everything you've done over the last couple of years. It's just phenomenal. So for everybody.
Yeah, thanks for being part of Ned.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's all of you. It's a team effort, and Nederland always is. So I'm going to miss you all a lot, but you're not going to be without me for long.
If you see some neat policy snippets down in Erie, make sure that you get incorporated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, congrats and good luck in Erie, but yeah, hopefully you just learn more to bring it back to us later.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks to you all.
Well, thanks a bunch, Erica. Jennifer, are you clear enough?
She's not on, but
Okay.
yes, we're clear.
Miranda, you're clear enough? Okay, cool. So from here, we'd like to move into our informational item with folks from Hunter Wright. I think other folks from Eldora Mountain Resort.
Steve Roundtree and Brent Tregaskis are also on the whole Eldora, the Eldora squad, the ones we work with the most.
Thanks, Hunter. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Brent.
Well, no problem. Thanks for your time tonight. And I know it's late and we'll try to get through this quickly, but it's the 60th year anniversary of Eldora, believe it or not. And that's our new logo on the bottom of this screen with the 60 and our little tree in it. This was the original lodge at Eldora that was literally built, 61 years ago and still standing, believe it or not. So I want to, thank everybody for giving us a few minutes. We'll try to make this short. We have kind of a fun presentation that I think you'll appreciate. My name is Brent Tregaskis. I'm the president general manager. And just a little background, it's kind of fun to have a whole new board. I remember when I got here, 7.5 years ago, Hunter and Steve and I came in front of the then Board of Trustees and kind of spoke about we really want to establish a great relationship with town, be part of the community, and a lot of ideas on how we could do that. and it was pretty fun. Other than about 2 months later, I was on the NDDA board for the next 5 years of my life. So we've all participated at one level or another. Hunter Wright, who's been on the Sustainability Advisory Board for the town of Nederland for the last 3 years, and Steve Roundtree, who's been on, he took my place on the NDDA, Downtown Development Authority Board, and it's been really a lot of fun. We've had some fun working with town and being part of the community. So it's been good for all of us, and each of us are going to just share and just kind of going through a quick presentation. So we're psyched to be part of the community, even though we're just outside the town limits. We feel very much part of the community, and Miranda asked us to put something together on just give you an update on what we've been working on and what's going on just up the hill from you guys. And so I'll go to the next slide and let Hunter speak for a minute. You're muted, Hunter. Scroll down.
She's unmuted, but Hunter, you might have a audio setting needs adjusting.
Would she be *6? Are you on a phone or?
She's on her computer.
Okay.
Maybe scroll down where you can see the mute button. Can you see it? Okay, let's skip this page for just 1 second. We'll roll to Steve and see if Hunter can figure out her audio. And we'll go to the next page, and Steve can talk about local participation, which we're really proud of. We've done a lot recently, and Steve can speak to that. And hopefully Hunter can get her audio working.
Yeah, we'll breeze over the local relief and environment component of this, and it's going. We'll roll back to that. So local participation. I think Brent mentioned 3 of us that are on tonight from Eldora have participated in different ways with the local community. One of the really cool things that we've managed to continue to do and actually increase the amount of activity happening is the Ned Shred program that we do at the elementary school. Last year, kind of our in-kind donation total for that program was approximately $80,000 in total lessons. If you look at the value of the lesson rental gear and tickets included in all of the lessons we did for the school, we're already actively planning to have another successful year of that with the Ned Shred crew from the Ned Elementary PTA. So that's a really exciting component of what we do. It's making sure that kids that live in Nederland have an opportunity to get up to the mountain and experience what we do. We also work with other organizations in town through the donation match challenge, which is currently running right now at the mountain, where we match other people's donations. Teens Inc., we were able to donate over $4,000 to them last year. Another major component of what we do, and it's not just a Nederland local thing. It's our Ignite Adaptive Sports program, and with the tickets and season passes and all of the other in-kind donations we do with them, over $200,000 worth of effort that we put forth towards that adaptive sports program. And then over the course of the last couple summers, we've had an opportunity to really help some of the local events in Nederland, between the Ned Farmers Market, the Ned running race that benefits Teens Inc., Ned Gravel Race, and the Ned Jazz and Wine Festival. We had an opportunity to come down to town and participate in those events, as well as help them get off the ground by providing sponsorship funds for them. So some really cool ways for us to get our brand in front of the in the summertime when we're not open, but it's a great opportunity for us to partner with some local organizations and also be in front of the public at a time of year when we're typically quiet up at the mountain. So if we can maybe.
Oh, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can. So if we can back up a slide, we'll start this thing over. There we go.
Sorry about that. So what Steve's been talking about is our community pillar of Play Forever. So backing up a little bit, Play Forever is Eldora's corporate responsibility commitment to protect the environment and support our community. So the Play Forever commitment consists of two pillars, environment and community. So our environmental pillar includes our sustainability projects, engagement and advocacy for the long-term viability of our business and for the planet. And the priority issues under the environmental pillar are energy, waste, and land. Our main goal that we share with Nederland is the goal to be 100% renewable by 2025. Currently, Eldora is at 52% renewable energy, and we're actively procuring renewable energy, and we're working towards, and we plan on meeting that goal by 2025 in alignment with the town of Nederland. We have 16 different departments at Eldora with environmental goals for each department that support our overall climate action plan to lower our greenhouse gases. We could basically have a whole presentation on our environmental goals alone, but for tonight's purposes, we're going to focus on our Play Forever commitment to support our community. So how do we support the community? Steve just talked about our local participation, and so I'm just going to talk about what we've been doing with our local relief and environment in the last couple of years. So we support the community in 3 different ways: through financial contributions, in-kind giving, and volunteerism. We do this to strengthen the place we work, we live, and we play. Like I said, the priority issues are local relief, participation, and environment. So under local relief, last year, everybody knows, or actually it was it was a year ago this time, the wildfire happened, and we donated $7,360 to the wildfire fund. We are working with Nederland Middle School, the high school, with the PTA. We have a sponsorship agreement that we started last April, and since last April, we've donated $13,754 to the PTA to help supplement for the teachers to do these funds, do anything to help with lighting, if they need to get extra lights for the classroom, if they have special projects they want to do in the classroom. It's basically grants for the teachers and for the classes. And so we have a sponsorship agreement for this winter season for $31,694. And that is for a fundraiser where we use their parking lot for our employee parking, and we shuttle up to our employees up to the resort. We have donated to the Nederland Food Pantry, and every year after we close for the season, we donate all of our perishables to the food pantry. The environmental organizations that we support, Wild Bear Nature Center, we participate in their capital campaign. The Backcountry Film Festival, the last 2 years, we've sponsored that. Steve mentioned the donation match challenge. This year, it just started, it kicked off last Thursday. The 2 organizations that we're working with, we're super excited. It's the Native American Rights Fund and the Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance. So the Native Americans Rights Fund, fights for justice for Native Americans in Colorado and beyond. And you all know the Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance works to protect the Indian Peaks and James Peaks wilderness areas, which are adjacent to Eldora, and it sits upon the ancestral lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, and the Arapaho people. So Eldora will match between December 15th and January 15th. Eldora will match every dollar donated to the Play Forever Fund up to $10,000. So all funds raised during this period, including all public donations, plus Eldora's $10,000 matching donation, will be shared equally between the Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance and the Native American Rights Fund. And then also we do Play Forever Wednesdays, where starting in January through mid-April until we close, $5 from every lift ticket sold is donated to partner organizations. And so some examples of partner organizations that we're working with this season: Teens Inc., Special Olympics of Colorado, Women's Wilderness, Out Boulder County, Ignite Adaptive Sports, Ski Noir, 5280, Peak to Peak Endurance. Some environmental organizations we're working with: Leave No Trace, Protect Our Winters, the Boulder Watershed Collective, Wild Bear, of course, Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance, and then Canyon Cares for Local Relief and the Nederland Food Pantry. And then Steve's talked about local participation. So moving forward, Brent is going to talk a little bit about our parking lot expansion project.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in and just thank both these guys, because these guys, not only have they been working for the town of Nederland in an unpaid role, they're very involved in our senior leadership team at Eldora, and Hunter runs our sustainability as the director of sustainability and project development, and Steve is our business operations director. So they do have a full-time job working with me, and it's pretty interesting to come back and think about when I first got here and met the Board of Trustees, and we didn't have a really good relationship with town. And since then, as you can see, we've done a lot in working with you guys and trying to make a difference. And I feel like it's an effort in the right direction, and we're trying to get better and better at it. So I'll jump into parking lot. You can see on this slide, after 5 years of joy working with the county, we finally got built and approved a pretty significant parking expansion that I really believe will help the town of Nederland and some of the traffic problems that we have been in the middle of. And I'm very excited, because it just, if you think about it, at least last 5 weeks, we're already almost at Christmas time, and we have, I think the new parking lot is really going to help us and help the community and some of the negativity that's surrounded with being a quasi ski town. So there's some pretty fun things we've done. We've really improved some of the efficiency, and I think you could probably have already read this on the screen. So I'm going to go to this little 2-minute video while I talk. And if you can go to the next page and hit the play button, I'll just talk through this a little bit and give you guys an idea of what we've done. If we can get that to play, I think it'll be great.
Brent, our bandwidth here isn't great, so I think Hunter was going to try and show it on her screen.
Okay, so either one.
I can send it to the board, but I can't show it here.
Okay, well, we'll see if it will play. Not yet. We don't see it yet.
Did you make her the presenter? Who's been the presenter? She has.
Well, she can take it over herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's pretty good at this stuff. We'll see, but I'll just keep going. You know, it's really, I think it's going to be a great thing for the community. We've moved about 90,000 cubic yards of earth. We did not haul any of that earth that we created off property. We used it to improve our existing parking lots and the drainage associated with those parking lots, which is a huge improvement. It's basically like we created a new north lot, or what a lot of people call the bear lot. And so we have about 500 spots up there and another couple hundred spots down near the Nordic Center. We put in 30 charge point chargers for electric vehicles. right up near the main lift. So that's a huge win. And we did a lot of this we did not haul any earth or material we created by building this parking lot. We crushed on site. At one time we had 5 different crushers rolling it, taking gigantic boulders and making little tiny rocks out of them. And so there was 5 different sizes of crushers. We didn't haul any material in or out. So it's really kind of an environmentally sensitive subject. We've improved not only drainage, but a lot of the watershed we protected by having a couple big catch basins that are now in place that keep dirty water from running downstream. So we think that's a big win. It's really, I think the flow of the parking lot is great. There's a new entrance to the parking lot where about 50% of our cars turn off before you ever get into the gate. And we really think that's going to keep traffic from backing up into town. So we're essentially parking 4 lots at one time in the morning, and it's really speeding things up as we've seen. One of the negative things that we've heard, especially from locals, is the county as part of our requirement is requiring us to charge single occupancy vehicles $10 if they show up on a weekend or a holiday. And the locals were pretty vocal about that, how they didn't like that or not a big fan, but it hasn't proven to be that big of a deal yet. But we've had about 350 cars show up every Saturday the last 5 weeks, and it's gone a little better than I thought. One of the fears I had was that a lot of people would be carpooling and taking up parking spots in town at the BNF or other various parking spots in town and affecting businesses in a negative way. And so far, we've been pretty good. But I think the county has the ability to increase that cost over $10 up to $20 if we don't get to our goals of having more than 2 people per car. So that's still out there. We fought. We did not really want to charge for parking, but that was one of the requirements the county required. You can see some of these big piles of dirt out here, and we moved all that material down to the lower lot to improve it. We raised it by about an average of 3 feet and improved the drainage and such for the future. So it kind of made sense to do what we did. We basically created our own road base on site. And it was a pretty big improvement. We're excited about it. We have a little more re-veg to do in the spring. And other than that, it's gone really well. And so far it's really helped the overall flow of the resort. And I really expect very few days that we would have any kind of negative impact into town. I just can't imagine that unless it snows on a Friday night, a foot or something, that we're going to have real big problems where, like we have had in the past. This should cover most of us for several years to come. And we did it without hauling, having thousands and thousands of trucks bring in material up and or down. And we're pretty proud of that. It's gone really well. So improved drainage and a lot of positive things. And I think for most of you guys, it should really be the thing we've been looking for to take some pressure off of the community and the negative impacts that the ski areas have had in town. And I think we're excited about it. Now we've got other challenges, but I think it'll be a fun opportunity. So that's kind of what we've been up to. We also had the biggest capital summer. We did a lot of food and beverage improvements. We did a lot of snowmaking improvements, and we spent more money this summer than we have ever made in a year. So we have a great company behind us that's been really supportive and making things happen. So we'll move to the next slide, if you could, Miranda, or whoever's in charge now. All right, Steve's going to talk a little bit about partnerships and opportunities.
Yeah, I'll jump back in. So, Eldora is the largest employer in the Nederland and surrounding mountain community. And a big part of what we do with having a winter business up here is that we infill a very summer heavy tourist economy by driving the winter economy. We also encourage our guests to patronize local businesses, and a lot of our employees live in Nederland and the surrounding area, own homes, and patronize local businesses. So we also do some partner pass programs with local businesses in Nederland to offer some similar discounted skiing opportunities so that their employees can have a perk where they can come up and ski at the mountain. And we work with Busey Brews, Crosscut Pizza, New Moon, Salto Tin Shed, and some of those businesses we also work with purchases as well.
So yeah, I think when I was just thinking about this and putting this together, it was like, what kind of things can we do together? And I mentioned one of my fears is like overcrowding parking lots and Ned to get people to carpool. We certainly want people to carpool from Nederland or from Boulder. We do a lot of things to support that. We're picking up shuttles at the Justice Center down in Boulder and doing a lot of those things. And I think anything we can continue to do with you guys like we have in the past to have parking options for guests and locals and employees would be I think really smart move. So I think we need to continue to open those dialogues again. And I know Miranda's had a couple locations that would be pretty good potentially to suggest locals meet at and carpool up from. And we're excited about those kinds of opportunities in the future and think we should open that dialogue because we want to continue to reduce emissions and get fewer people off the road. I think it just makes sense. We're encouraged, we're really from the county's perspective, want to get fewer people more people per car to show up at the resort. And we also want people to spend more money in Nederland. And if we can work out a deal where people park in Ned and drive up and spend a little bit of money while they're there, I think it's a win-win for everybody. And the big one that I would just like to throw back in your guys' court a little bit, in the 5 years that I was on the NDDA, we had several meetings with CDOT, and they definitely are aware of the problems associated with making a left-hand turn into the BNF or trying to get out of the BNF and the bank and Ace Hardware, and they're very aware of the intersection up by where you turn to Eldora and that potentially becoming a roundabout. And I think that I see this as much more of a global thing than a ski area thing. But I mean, coming through Nederland in the fall at peak color time and on any Saturday in the summer, we have got to fix that problem. And anything the ski area can do to support that effort, that's really going to be driven by the town and trying to work with CDOT to get that thing approved or those projects approved. And I know they're very aware of it. I've had 2 meetings with them when I was on the NDDA, and I really think there's an opportunity to fix those 2 particular intersections. I mean, we're a one bridge town, and we've got to do something long-term that's not necessarily for the ski area, but it really long-term, we need to do something to improve traffic in the summer, because as you know, Nederland is very summer driven, and we need to continue to work with that. And I don't think it's necessarily the NDDA that can make that happen. I think it's you guys at the Board of Trustees to put some horsepower behind that and see if we can't get the CDOT to get that moved up on their list of projects and prove the need is important. So I would really encourage you to take that project on, and anything I can do or we can do to help that cause, we would be more than happy to do it or have some meetings and testify as to its importance, not for the winter necessarily, but for the future of Nederland. I believe that's one of those things we could do together. And then lastly on this page is just employee housing. We obviously would love to see more and more employee housing. If there's anything we could ever do together with you guys, we'd love to look at ways to partner, because we know we right now sometimes rent with what little employee housing we actually own. We co-op with Forest Service and Teens Inc. and some other agencies that need that. And, we only really need those employees for 4 or 5 months a year. So we need to work at a permanent solution. And doing that, we're currently renting a lot of different properties in Nederland. And then we subsidize housing for our employees. So it's not free, but we're taking, about 50 or 60% of the cost and making it affordable for them. So we budget a certain amount every year, around $100,000 to do our part in making housing a little bit more affordable. And anything we can do together going forward would really be a couple of those things that I know would make a difference. And we just want to continue to be a great partner with you guys and work together. And if there's anything else you have a great idea that you'd love to talk to us about, our door is always open, because we'd really love to continue to improve our relationship with the community. And as you can see, just from our volunteerism and where we're putting our money where our mouth is, makes a big difference. And we feel like we've made a lot of headway, but we have a lot more that we can do. So I think you can go to the last page here, and we're almost done. You're almost done with us, and we can get back to the real business. But I think it's got a funny quote, I think any town is a sense of localism that is born by a community and some type of we're in it togetherism. And that's not my quote. It's a quote from Heather Hansman from Powder Magazine. But I think, whether we like it or not, Nederland is a somewhat of a ski community or a ski town. Maybe not on the level of Vail, thank God, but we always want to be part of the community, and we're in it together. So we'd love to continue to have a really good relationship with you guys. Hopefully it's made a difference these last 7 years. And we want to continue that effort. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to bend your ear for a few minutes, and welcome to the new board. I don't think any of the current board members were on when I first volunteered 7 years ago. And it's kind of exciting to see some of the changes that not only the ski area has done, but Nederland as well. And I think we're all growing up together, and let's continue to have a great relationship.
Thanks, Brent. And thanks, Steve. Thanks, Hunter. Thanks, Steve. We appreciate you guys being here tonight.
No problem. We thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully that was fast enough, but that's as fast as we could do it.
And here comes the snow.
Appreciate
We
it.
want to be a good and a little wind with that, but we'll take the snow for sure. And we're set up. We're doing well so far. And thanks very much for your time. And thanks for Miranda for reaching out to us, because we love to do this kind of thing, and not to just toot our own horn, but just to develop a relationship with the community.
And Brent, thanks for the what we did the summer with the farmer's lot, or or right near the reservoir, that piece of land.
Yeah. No
Fisherman's
problem.
lot.
We love sponsoring stuff like that and being a part of it.
Okay, thanks y'all. See you on the slopes.
Okay.
Guys,
Thanks
have a
so
good
much, you
night.
guys. Thanks for all your
Merry
work.
Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. I think we have to make a motion
I motion to adjourn.
to adjourn, and we can just do
Second.
reports from afar. Macy?
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold, Trustee Severs,
Yes.
and Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 10:01 p.m.
Thank you.